آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, we'll continue from where we left off yesterday in the Tafseer of Surat Fussilat. We stopped at ayah number 8. Inshallah, today we'll start with ayah number 9. Quick reminder, these verses have very specific significance in the sense that the Prophet ﷺ used them as a response in a very famous incident when Utbah ibn Rabi'ah came to him and made him all of the bizarre offers that Quraysh was willing to make the Prophet ﷺ in order for him to take back some of the teachings he was bringing to them ﷺ, in their attempt to negotiate with him and maybe get him to compromise a little. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ throughout that period refused. He refused over 8 attempts for them to negotiate with him and making him several different offers in different senses. And this one here, when this story was revealed, Rabi'ah had made him at least 6 different offers in terms of what is that you need. You want sovereignty? Do you want status? Do you want wealth? Just say what it is that you want. And the Prophet ﷺ, for him, none of it meant anything. But when Utbah was done making his offers, the Prophet ﷺ's response was merely just reciting the first 13 to 14 verses of Surat Fussilat. I think that's very meaningful. And Surat Fussilat, its theme is very straightforward. You are obligated to offer the best da'wah possible. It should be detailed. It should be well explained. It should work all together. It should have all the elements of a logical, critical argument. But even when you do that, the majority of people on this planet don't really respond to words. They respond to actions. They respond to character. Da'wah with character is just better. It's more sustainable. People find it more meaningful. As important as it is, obviously, to bring forward an argument that is meaningful and that makes sense. And we are, as human beings, held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for not responding to something that makes sense, which is what Surat Fussilat is going to explain. I mean, when you're offered an argument that is logical and you refuse it just based on a whim or desire or whatever it is that's holding you back or whatever reason you have, you're held accountable for that. That is actually the reason that many of the aqwam, many of the nations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the story of, were punished. They were punished because their prophets offered them arguments. They had no rebuttals, but they just refused. But it's funny, the surah with all of that saying, yes, and that's all true. And the proper argument must be made, and the people must respond to it. And if they're not going to be held accountable, this da'wah with character just works better. It just does. It's the bottom line. And one punch that Khabib landed was better like 1,000,000 khutbahs that were made over like 500 years. Honestly, I don't even watch this stuff. I don't even understand what the sport is about. I don't even know the guy. However, one punch he landed seemed to have more impact on the Muslim ummah. One goal scored by the Moroccan team affected the ummah way more than what can I tell you? How many hours, how endless hours of durus and lectures and teachings and arguments online, documented of Muslim scholars and Muslim teachers sitting and talking and explaining. One action that has some degree of meaning to it will have way more impact, just way more impact. And that is just the fact of the matter. We as an ummah have to recognize that it's our actions that do the best da'wah. What I do is way overrated, like very overrated. You have no idea. It's needed, obviously. You cannot have an ummah without it. You need a masjid, and you need a dars, and you need to talk about the deen, and people have to hear what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining. That, hands down, that's what's needed. But it's not even remotely close to what actions that are profound and that have a meaning behind them will have on an ummah and beyond. I think that's just something we should acknowledge and think about, because Surat Fussilat is going to take us down that route. It's going to force us to see it that way. And I hope by doing that, you end up feeling the value that you carry as a person outside of the masjid, in the masjid and outside of the masjid, in terms of how you affect this deen and how you affect the ummah. You're extremely impactful. You're extremely impactful. Wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stationed you in this world, you have extreme impact just by the mere, just by the merit of you behaving as a Muslim. Just being the best Muslim you can be, the impact that you have on the world, on Muslims and on non-Muslims, is very, very real. It's very real. It's sometimes even more real than anything else you can think of. But I think as Muslims, we sometimes we don't value it. We don't see the importance of it, and we feel like, oh, if I don't have a platform and if people aren't listening to me, and I don't have, today it's all about followers and how views and musharif and all this garbage that's honestly meaningless. But that's not true. That's not true. What moves people in this world are stories of encounters they had with others. That's how this world works. Each and every one of us. What brings us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what keeps us on the path with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our moments, our stories, our encounters with people, things that happen, that's what moves us. So knowing that you're a part of this big network of character building, an ummah that's just based on character building. Everyone is trying to behave, put themselves in their best behavior to affect other people positively. Understand that you're a part of that just like we were affected, you will affect others. To me, that's very, very important, because hopefully that will bring back to you the importance of just being the best Muslim you can be, because you're performing da'wah, you're performing real da'wah that will affect many, many people, and actually has more impact, in my opinion, than a lot of the other stuff that you think is impactful, but really it isn't. It's just where are you? What are you doing? You're a student, you're a professional, you're a spouse, you're a friend. What are you doing? Wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stationed you and positioned you in life, just be the best person you can be. I have no idea the impact you're going to have and the amount of real da'wah that you're performing just by carrying yourself as a Muslim. Okay. So we recited the first 8 verses that talked about that a bit, and it showed how the disbelievers, في قلوبهم في أكنة في آذانهم وقر, they don't hear it. Their hearts are in a veil. There's a barrier. فَعْمَل, just you show what you have, we'll show what we have. Let's compete with actions. فَعْمَل إِنَّنَا عَامِلُونَ. And then the Prophet ﷺ explained really what this is about. You believe in La ilaha illallah? Yes, فَاسْتَقِيمُوا إِلَيْهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا. And then walk the path of istiqamah, where you're non-corruptible. وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا, and continue to ask for forgiveness as you make your mistakes on the way. And when he defined subhanahu wa ta'ala the mushrikeen, did not define them theologically as they are usually defined as polytheists who don't, no. لا يؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة كافرون. 2 very practical concepts or embedded in practice. لا يؤتون الزكاة is a practice, and not believing in the hereafter is a practice. It's a practice. In the Quran, there's no, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about believing in the hereafter, he's not talking about an issue of theology. No. He's talking about the fact that you feel accountable. And because you feel accountable, you're going to behave in a certain way because you're fearing the fact that you're going to be held accountable in front of Allah on the day of judgment. Because the belief in Akhirah without that piece is meaningless. So I believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah, but I act like, what does it mean? What does it mean if I believe, yes, I'll be resurrected, but my behaviors do not reflect that at all. I'm not worried at all about being held accountable for any of my deeds, but I believe I'll be held accountable. That doesn't mean anything. That's just, you're just playing with words now. Now it's just a game of claims that has no truth to it. And that was the last thing we read last night. We'll start inshallah from ayah number 9. These verses are very, very beautiful. They describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah's actions. Allah's actions, specifically. We'll go through these verses and they won't describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala statically, as maybe verses in Surat al-Hadid would do, or Surat al-An'am. These verses will talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll talk about His actions, just to mirror what we've been explaining. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the best way for da'wah for people is to know what I did before we know who He is, Jalla Jalaluhu. Because He is Al-Alim, and He is Al-Azim, and He is Al-Kareem, and He is Al-Quddus subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Subuh. But maybe what's more meaningful for people than just these descriptions is actually what He did subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is true. That is true. We'll explain them and I'll shed some light inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أئنكم لتكفرون بالذي خلق الأرض في يومين وتجعلون له أندادا ذلك رب العالمين وجعل فيها رواسي من فوقها وبارك فيها وقدر فيها أقواتها في أربعة أيام سواء للسائلين ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي دخان فقال لها وللأرض ائتيا طوعا أو كرها قالتا أتينا طائعين. So he starts subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, قُلْ, say, أَإِنَّكُمْ, indeed, the truth of the matter is that you لَتَكْفُرُونَ بِالَّذِي خَلَقَ الْأَرْضَ فِي يَوْمِينَ, that you disbelieve, that you refuse to believe in the one who created the earth in 2 days. وَتَجْعَلُونَ لَهُ أَنْدَادًا, and you claim that there are partners and associates for him. ذَلِكَ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ, that is the Lord of all. Al-Alameen in Arabic is everything that is not God. Everything that is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is called Alameen, and that's just the usage of the word in the language. So he is the Lord of the universe, so he is the Lord of everything. Now, the concept of Yawmain in the Quran, the days that are used, I think are important to kind of just take a moment and talk about. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ. He created the cosmos and the earth in 6 days. Now, we know throughout the Quran that the days that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of in His creation are not the days that we experience. That's already established. It could be 1,000 to 50,000 to more is what the Quran says, even more than that. So Quran keeps an open-end concept in terms of the actual amount of time. It's different. So we know that. We also, what else do we know? We know that the word yawm in Arabic means a period of time. But because the period of time that is most famous are the 24 hours of the day that keep on repeating themselves, it was used for that, to describe that. So the initial usage of the word yawm was not to describe a 24-hour period, but rather just to describe any period of time. Yawm, number one. Number two. Number three, when we talk about a period of time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't necessarily mean by that the time being short or long, but rather the nature of the time. And this is what one of my teachers basically understood the verses to be. This is how he understands them. He looks at the concept of ayyam, sittat ayyam, as the different natures of period of time. So instead of saying 6 days as in how long that was, because today we understand it's like 13 point something billion years, he looks at them as 6 days of nature of time. So 6 days as in the 4 seasons and day and night, right? Without those, there would be no creation. Like nothing would be on earth. The reason that you and I are here is because the earth has these days, has these periods of time. The earth goes through these 4 seasons. The earth has day and night. If you remove any of those seasons, or if you remove the concept of the continuity of day and night, then life would cease to exist. There would be no life on earth. It's very simple. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing His creation in 6 days and in 2 days and in 4 days, this is not a description that is literal in terms of our understanding of what a day actually is. And that's very important. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not require time, and nor is time a part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws in terms of what governs His actions. It's what governs ours. So when He says that I created the cosmos and the earth in 6 days, and then the earth were 2 days, for example, out of those 6, regardless of whether that, again, is the nature of period of time, so day and night, or whether that is actually referring to the percentage of time from the initial bulk of time. It's what we needed to come here, not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needed. Because إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. When he wants something, he says kun, be, and it will be. The only problem that we have as human beings is that for some reason, I don't know why, this is still I'm not sure about, that we believe that when he says be, then whatever is going to be must happen instantaneously. That's how we feel. Like, okay, you said be, so it must happen immediately. So I don't know where that came from, though. I mean, where did who made that up? Who determined that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says be, and something is going to obviously be right after that, that the time period has to be in the seconds? Who determined that? That's just a determination we made as human beings because that's what seems cool to us. This is a medieval concept of God. This has nothing to do with the Islamic understanding of it at all. And this is not what Muslim scholars have ever understood life to be, by the way. Meaning, if you just go back and you start studying a little bit of what the Muslim scholars talked about during the Golden Age. Like if you read the book like Al-Hayawan by Al-Jahid, or if you look at what Ikhwan al-Safa worked on, or if you look at some of the Mufassirin like Al-Fakhr al-Razi, they don't believe this. They never believe that to be the case, that in order for when he creates something, it has to exist. That's what basically, without naming faiths, this is what the faiths we have today believed God to be. They had this vision of a man, Jalla Jalalullah, in white with a long white beard, sitting on a throne somewhere in the sky, and just zapping things into creation. Giraffe, a tree, a human being. And that understanding of God is very simplistic, and it's not Islamic in any form or manner. So he said, kun subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, be, oh human being, you're going to be. And the human being is. The human being was the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it. It's just, what was the amount of time that was required for that to happen? It turned out to be over 13 billion years. Or maybe it's a millisecond. Who cares? How does that change anything? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said be and the human being was, does it matter the time? Why does the time matter? Why does that matter? Why does it have to be a second in order for us to be impressed? I'm more impressed the fact that it took that long, actually. I find it to be much more impressive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said be, and then from one cell, one unicell organism, all of this came. That there was enough programming in one strand of DNA that allowed everything that ever lived to exist. To me, that is way more impressive. Because I understand a little bit of how, I understand a little bit of how coding works. A little bit. We just start to understand how you can code certain things, and if you code them correctly, you can end up with software that actually works, something that you can actually benefit from. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says be, and from just one strand of DNA, there's enough programming in that, just enough programming in it for everything that exists today everything that we know, there's a lot that existed we don't even know about, existed. That to me is more worthy of an awe than just zapping things. I don't understand it because that's more mystic. So when he talks subhanahu wa ta'ala about the fact that he created fi yawmayn in two periods of time, theirs is symbolic for you to learn from, for you to follow along with the concept, for you to go and look and understand, what does he mean? How did this actually work? And when you find out how it actually works, you actually see the methods, the tools that were used, when you see how creation actually is the way it is, what adaptation it had to use, what macroevolution it had to use, these tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the randomization, the randomness that would occur with the mutations, and how natural selection will kill off the weak and keep the strong. Just knowing that system was put in place from the beginning, allowing you and I to actually exist, is just much more impressive, just more beautiful. So when he says, قُلْ أَإِنَّكُمْ, say indeed you disbelieve in the one who created the world or the earth in 2 days. It took a long time. Our planet was cooked around the sun for hundreds of millions of years. It was just a very slow process of cooking. Life was cooked in a very slow process for millions of years. But why is it not impressive for some people that it's millions of years? Why? I don't know. I don't know who came up with this idea that it has to be quick. It has to be like the quick in the terms of our seconds. Flies live for 7 days. They feel like they live a full life, by the way. Time is very... It's not... the laws of relativity are very important here. Time is relevant. This is not something... The way I understand time is differently even from the way you understand time, differently from the way a child understands time, differently from someone who's very ill from someone who's very happy. We just understand time differently. Creations, they comprehend it differently. The one who created time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time means nothing to him. It's just the capsule that we exist inside. Because we can't really leave it. We can understand that maybe something exists without time, but we can't. It's not something that I can comprehend. It's just beyond my ability to imagine. Go ahead. Try to imagine anything that's not happening with some sequence to it. It's impossible. It's just our brain, we can fathom that maybe that exists, but we cannot actually imagine it. Our minds they don't have the ability to do it. And space is the same thing. So when he continues, that's why he said, ذَلِكَ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That is the description of the Lord of everything. وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ مِنْ فَوْقِهَا. And he made sure that there were mountains on top of it. وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا. And he smothered it with his blessings. وَقَدَّرَ فِيهَا أَقْوَاتَهَا. And he decreed and determined all of its sustenance. في أربعة أيام. In 4 days total. The first 2 days and another 2 days. في أربعة أيام. In 4 days total. سواء للسائلين. And that is a flat answer for all those who ask. And all those who are interested or have questions about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did it, tell them this. The creation itself, 2 out of the 6. And for the next 2, everything on top of the earth and living inside of it slowly came to exist. The mountains and the sustenance and the barakah that was going to exist in it. When he says barakah fiha, means that he put within it a system that will continue to move. The concept of barakah means that things continue to increase. There's a system that supports itself. It just keeps on working, keeps on producing something. The barakah here doesn't necessarily mean the concept of barakah that we understand from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives, meaning there's a godly aspect of something we have. Barakah fiha, it just means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a system that will continue to produce something. It doesn't die off. It doesn't produce once and then it dies. No, it's self-sustaining. It will take care of itself, which is the system that allowed us to exist, that we are very professionally destroying and ruining. I don't know how we're going to survive afterwards, but the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in place that will continue to produce everything that all the organisms that live inside it require. وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا. It's beautiful when you look at nature and how it works. Yes, it's brutal, but it works. It continues to produce the same thing. Life continues to move forward. You don't need intervention, external intervention. Actually, external intervention is what kills it all. Any external intervention that happens since Baraka Fiya subhanahu wa ta'ala has been to end it. Has been the 6 extinctions that have happened over history, or the adhab that have occurred upon people. Aside from that, Baraka Fiya, there's always going to be sustenance. It just keeps on producing. The earth keeps on spinning, keeps on turning around the sun, and it keeps on producing life. It keeps on bringing forward that which we need. وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا وَقَدَّرَ فِيهَا أَقْوَاتَهَا. And within it, he determined subhanahu wa ta'ala all of the sustenance that everything was going to need. فِي أَرْبَعَةِ أَيَّامٍ, in the remaining of the next 2 days, for a total of 4. سَوَاءً لِلسَّائِلِ. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, istawa means istiwa is something I'm not going to spend time explaining because it's a long theological conversation about what istiwa actually means. But istawa means he took full control, or he turned his attention to, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a figure of speech, obviously. But it's important because he refers to a concept that we understand today. إِلَى السَّمَاءِ وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ. To the cosmos as it was dukhan. Dukhan is a thick substance. That's the actual explanation of it in Arabic. It's something that doesn't necessarily have, it's not materialistic, you can't hold on to it, but it has enough thickness that it's something that you can see, that you can almost, there's an illusion of it, meaning you think that there's actual solidity, that is solid, but it's not. But it's thick enough for you to think that it is. That's what he's talking about. The concept of the mist. And that concept of mist is even scientific in terms of what we think existed out there before all of the planets and the galaxies and the stars and all the constellations came together and started. We think that is what they believe existed before. فَاسْتَوَى سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ, as it was just slowly forming to become what it is today. فَقَالَ لَهَا وَلِلْأَرْضِ. And he said to it and to the earth, إِيتِيَا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا. Come to me, willingly or unwillingly. This is the mirror of the verse, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offered this story that you and I lived to things before us. Would you like to be the creation that has the ability to say no? Would you like to carry that amana? Would you like to be the creation that has the ability to say no? Or you just want to come unwilling, just come the way it is? قَالَ أَتَيْنَا طَائِعِينَ. No, we'll come willingly. We don't want this. What do you mean? Well, isn't it the opposite? No. You see, we're the ones who are going to come karha. We're the creation that's going to come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unwillingly. We're the ones. Why? Because right now we can do whatever we want, and then we die and we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether we like it or not. You see, you're going to come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going to return to Allah. There is no debate on that matter. The only question is when. When do you want to do it? Do you want to do it now when you have the choice to do it and there's some ajr waiting for you? Or would you like to do it when you have no choice at all and there's no ajr attached to it? It doesn't make a difference. You're coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will all do tasbih. We will all perform sujood. We will all perform perfect repentance. We will all have the highest degree of khushu' and concentration and clarity with our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will have a daraja of iman that only the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam achieved in dunya. We will all have that on the day of judgment though, when it doesn't matter anymore. When no one is keeping track. When those who are documenting your status and where your heart is aren't documenting anymore. And there's no way for you to prove that no one cares. You say things, no one's listening. Right now, you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you say, Ya Rabb, and then there's documentation of it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to you, because He is qareeb, and He yujib da'wat al-da'i idha da'ahu subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the day of judgment, people will also make dua. قَالُوا فَادْعُوا قَالُوا أَوَلَمْ تَكُ تَأْتِيكُمْ رُسُلُكُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ. Why weren't you sent prophets to tell you what was right and what was? قَالُوا بَلَى. Yes, قَالُوا فَادْعُوا then. Go ahead, make dua now. وَمَا دُعَاءُ الْكَافِرِينَ إِلَّا فِي ضَلَالٍ. But no one's listening to you. It's just going into nothingness. Dalal means it's just aimless. You make dua now, it's not aimless. It goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he responds to you, Jalla Jalaluhu, in whatever manner he believes is best or he sees fit. But Yawm al-Qiyamah, for 50,000 years, people will make dua and no one's listening. So you're coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just willingly or unwillingly. قَالَتَا أَتَيْنَا طَائِعِينَ. No, we'll come willingly. We don't want this. Why? That's why there's no ajr, there's no jannah for samawat al-ard. There's no reward for them. There's no specific place where they get to experience. No. Because they don't have the option. You have the option. And because you have the option, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened for you two doors. Choose the one that you want. It's at the end completely up to us. All of the verses in the Quran that talk about creation are extremely, extremely symbolic. This is the important piece when you're reading the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send the Quran as a book of astrophysics. It's not a book of biology. It's not a book of anthropology. That's not what the Quran is here for. The Quran is to explain to you the symbolism behind all of the things you're going to find out as you walk the earth and you figure out how things happened. The expectation in the Quran that you're going to siru fil ard, right? How many times? You're going to walk the earth. Fanzuru, when you're going to look, and you're going to observe, and you're going to learn. And with time, you're going to figure out certain things. You're going to find out how things happened, and what happened, and the process of it. That being known that's going to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us the symbolism behind it all. Meaning what exactly it all symbolizes in terms of why it is the way it is, and how we're supposed to understand what we are looking at and what we are understanding from the scientific discoveries that we come up with. Please read the Quran that way. Because if you do, then you'll benefit. When you see Adam alayhi salam, من ماء and من تراب and من طين and من طين اللازب and من صلصال كالفخار and من صلصال من حمأ مسنون. So which is it? It's all of them are symbolic. They all symbolize something. Water symbolizes something. طين اللازب symbolizes something. صلصال من حمأ مسنون symbolizes something. They're just symbols talking about the structure of the human nafs and what it's built upon. It's the graduality of the human existence. It's not trying to explain the process. You're not supposed to go into a lab and read the Quran and then try to put together no, this is not what he's trying to do. That's not what the Quran is there for. This is a complete misuse of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to explain. So when he talks about these 2 days and 4 days, he's talking about the usage of these periods of time and their accumulation and how it started very, very slow. And then you started with the earth, and then you required things to exist upon it, the mountains and the rizq and the sustenance and the systems that will allow the continuity of it. We'll recite, inshallah, the verses, the 3 verses that are left, inshallah. فقضاهن سبع سماوات في يومين وأوحى في كل سماء أمرها وزينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وحفظا ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم فإن أعرضوا فقل أنذرتكم صاعقة مثل صاعقة عاد وثمود إذ جاءتهم الرسل من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم ألا تعبدوا إلا الله قالوا لو شاء ربنا لأنزل ملائكة فإنا بما أرسلتم به كافرون فقضاهن سبع سماوات, he decreed them to be 7 cosmos. في يومين, in the remainder of the next 2 days, which is the 6 days in total. So 2 days and then 4, meaning in total 4, and plus another 2 days is the full 6. So it's not 2 plus 4 plus 2, but it's 2 leading to 4, which is in the first 2 verses, and then another 2, which is a 6. وَأَوْحَى فِي كُلِّ سَمَاءٍ أَمْرَهَا, and he gave each cosmos, each heaven, each sky its mandate, meaning what it's going to exist for. وَزَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا, as for the closest cosmos, or the closest sky, which is one that you see, he filled it or adorned it بِمَصَابِيحَ, with stars, وَحِفْظًا, as a form of beautification and a form of protection. وَحِفْظًا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ, this is the decree of the unfathomable and the all-knowing. There's no reason for you as a Muslim to refuse science because of your deen. If this is all you walk away from today, then that's something helpful. There's never a reason for you to be studying and learning about the world and then stop and say, no, I'm not going to study this anymore because I'm Muslim or because Islam goes. No. Science and this book will never clash. And if you think they are, it's because either you misunderstood the book or you misunderstood what you're reading in terms of science. They'll never clash. And there's no reason for you to shy away from any scientific theory, anything at all. And the reason behind it being, my religion. There is no reason, there's at all. There's never been, there never will be. Because the Quran is symbolic in the way that it's explaining what's happening. Science is going to tell you the how. The Quran tells you who, tells you why, tells you what, tells you when, doesn't tell you how. That's what science does. So you use science to figure out the how. You figure out the how only so that you're more impressed by exactly what occurred. You understand it better. That's why إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Those who truly, truly revere God are the scientists, because they understand how. Once you understand how, you're more at awe of what He actually made, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is not designed to do that for you. It's not trying to do that. So there's no room for it to clash. There's no room. Science is not interested in why. It's not interested in the symbol. It doesn't care. It just tells you how things happen, describes the processes, and then you connect some dots so you figure out how things work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is talking about something very different than that. So there's no reason for you to ever shy away from something. If you don't like a theory, don't like it because you scientifically don't think it makes sense and you're looking for a scientific alternative. Not because your deen told you that it should. No. At all. If you're Muslim, this is not a struggle that you have at all. You've never had this struggle. If you knew what the Muslim scholars during the Islamic Golden Era, if you knew what the Muslim scholars talked about in terms of the theories they had of creation, of existence, you would have a very different comprehension of your deen, by the way. We are on the wrong side of this, of the graph. We're on the wrong side of the Islamic history graph. We're in a very low spot in comparison to where we once were. And if we go back 1,000 years in history, we were at a better spot socially, intellectually, as a community who understood things and looked at the world in a certain way. When you systematically starve people and oppress them for 100, 200 years, what do you think comes from that? Besides ignorance, and besides superstition, and besides a lack of ability to be flexible and comprehend anything. This is what we are. We're coming out of that. We're just waking up. We're just, slapping ourselves on the face, kind of trying to wake up from a slumber that went on for a couple of centuries. So for us, a lot of what actually was is not clear to us. And a lot of the cultural aspects of the deen that our parents grew up with aren't really what Islam is about. And when you look at the Islamic Golden Era, you listen to the names of the scholars, you understand that Muslim scholars were people who had, you can't use the word alim upon someone who only studied one or two disciplines of knowledge. And it can't be used to describe someone who only studied Islamic law. We have words for that. He could be an usuli, he can be a faqih, he can be a mufassir, a muhaddith. These are words that are used in all of the books. A alim is someone who has studied something else. A botanist, an astronomist, someone who has studied something outside of law. And they had theories and they had understandings and they came up with ideas. And this is very important to understand. We talked about creation, and we talked about the graduality of life, and we talked about we talked about it way before the modern world did, like way before. Like I'm talking maybe 500, 600 years in advance, we were talking about stuff that they just came up with, maybe a century ago. And then when they came up with it a century ago, we're the first people to say, no, that's not what are you talking about? Your great-grandfather, Yahi, talked about this stuff. Because that's how they understood the Quran. So this is symbolic. فَقَضَاهُنَّ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ. He decreed them to be seven skies in the remaining of the 2 days. And he gave a mandate to each sky in terms of what it was going to do. And then he beautified this close sky, the one that we have. And he filled it with masabi', with lamps, talking about the stars. وَحِفْظًا, in form of protection. That is the decree of the unfathomable, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the omniscious. That's how he put it together, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what you have. All of this, as huge as it is just there for you. He made it specifically so that you'd exist within it. You're a very small piece of it, but it's there for you. And this symbolism of something very small being worth all this is what the Quran is trying to explain to you. It's not about size. It's not about might. It's about a different set. It's about a value that comes from a different source that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has somehow embedded inside of you. And because of that, this earth took a couple of days to be prepared, and the cosmos another few days to be prepared for you and beautified and protected so that you can go ahead and exist. And here you are. And here we are. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرٌ. This تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ is the decree of the unfathomable, because you'll never understand why. Because the first question is, well, why did you do it? Why does this? Why would you make any of this? I don't know. No one does. And no one will ever do. No one ever will. Because if I give you the answer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us so that we would know him, you would ask, well, why? Why does he care about all that? I don't know. No one does. And no one ever will. Why? Because Allah al-Aziz. And if we understood all his motives, then he wouldn't be God anymore. He would just be, we would have figured him out. If you can figure him out, then he's not God. If you can figure anything out, you understand, you can break it down to its elements, you can equate it and turn it into an equation or a formula, it's not God anymore. Because the moment you can figure it out, there's a way for you to overcome it, for you to overpower it. Even if the percentage of that happening is 0.1 million zeros, 0.1%. If it's there, then it's not God. He is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because there's no chance. There's no chance. There's no way. We're not even, no. And actually, the way He created everything, so we understand that. Look how small you are. You're a speck. You're a speck of dust. You're a speck of dust in a massive existence. You're not even, your galaxy can't even be found. Forget about you being found. You're so small. But I made it for you. You're very valuable to me. But you had to be small so you understand that, because there's this struggle. I'm valuable, so no, you're valuable. Haddi. But okay, so I'm not. No, you are. You're important because we don't understand. What am I? Big or small? Yeah, exactly. You need to figure out exactly what you are. You need to figure out what it means to be a abd and to be a khalif and to put them together and then have the proper attitude, or else you're gonna either become too big or too small, and both approaches are gonna ruin everything. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ فَإِنْ أَعْرَضُوا. And if they refuse all of this, if everything that has been explained over the last 10, 11, 12 verses, أَعْرَضُوا, they turn away from it, they're not accepting the simple كِتَابٌ فُصِّلَتْ آيَاتُهُ, a book that has been detailed and well explained in the proper language. They're going to not listen to that. They're not going to look at the behaviors. They're not seeing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for them. What, this existed just like that, just came from nothing? When do you accept that type of argument outside of the universe? When is that argument even entertained? Imagine when you find someone dead with a couple of stab wounds and there's a knife. Yeah, the knife just somehow stabbed him. And then you put, no, it's not a homicide. This was just, the person just died. You'd be fired. Just stupid. You can say I don't know who did it, but you can't say no one did it. You can claim I have no idea who did that. That's fine. We put that in our files. But it didn't happen, or did no one's responsible. Someone comes to the hospital and they die. I'm going to say no. There's no reason. I may not know the reason, but I can't say there's no reason for it. Of course, there's something that did this. Of course, if I can't figure it out today, that's my problem. For us to look at all this, it's just there. Just there. Yeah, I know, it's infinite. What? What do you mean? It's based on time. What do you mean infinite? It moves with a sequence. It doesn't work that way. Whatever made it cannot exist within that time frame, within that framework of time and space, or else it doesn't make any sense. This is basics philosophy. You understand that it was talking about 7,000 years ago? It's the exact same arguments. Nothing has changed. This is one of the most pathetic things that exists in human history, is that we still have the exact same arguments, and we think they're new. We think, oh, look, now modern atheist. No, it's the same stuff. Aristotle talked about it. Plato talked. It's wallahi the exact same. Nothing's new. There's nothing new, because science and philosophy are two different realms, and there's really very little overlap between them. We only recently started to use science actually to debunk philosophy, which never works, and it never worked in the past, and it won't work today. So if they refuse all this, فَإِنْ أَعْرَضُوا فَقُلْ, say this, أَنذَرْتُكُمْ, I warn you, صَاعِقَةً, a thunderbolt or a massive blast, مِثْلَ صَاعِقَةِ عَادٍ وَثَمُودٍ, similar to the blast that came to Ad wa Thamud. Utbah bin Rabi'ah is sitting there explaining to the Prophet ﷺ, would you want money? Want to be king? Women? Want women? Are you sick? Are you insane? The Prophet ﷺ is listening. You're finished, Abu al-Walid. Yeah. Can I speak? Yes. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حاميم تنزيل من الرحمن الرحيم كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون بشيرا ونذيرا فأعرض أكثرهم فهم لا يسمعون وقالوا قلوبنا في أكنة مما تدعونا إليه وفي آذاننا وقر ومن بيننا وبينك حجاب فاعمل إننا عاملون قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فاستقيموا إليه واستغفروه وويل للمشركين الذين لا يؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم أجر غير ممنون قل أئنكم لتكفرون بالذي خلق الأرض في يومين وتجعلون له أندادا ذلك رب العالمين وجعل فيها رواسي من فوقها وبارك فيها وقدر فيها أقواتها في 4 أيام سواء للسائلين ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي هي دخان فقال لها وللأرض ائتيا طوعا أو كرها قالتا أتينا طائعين فقضاهن 7 سماوات في يومين وأوحى في كل سماء أمرها وزينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وحفظا ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم فإن أعرضوا فقل أنذرتكم صاعقة مثل صاعقة عاد وثمود. He jumps up and he puts his hand on the Prophet ﷺ's mouth. قال ناشدتك الله والرحم أبا القاسم ناشدتك الله والرحم أبا القاسم. I ask you with whatever relationship we have I ask you by Allah, I ask you by the kinship that we have to stop Abu al-Qasim, no more, no more. ثم انتبه إلى نفسه, and then he realized what he was doing. He was shaking, he was in fear, he had his hand on the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ, asking him no more. And then he was embarrassed, so he sat back. And he said, please continue. The Prophet ﷺ would continue. See, when he said, أنذرتكم صاعقة, tell them that I warned them of a blast that will take them all, just like it took Ad and Thamud. He felt it was going to hit him right then and there. The passion that existed in the words of the Prophet ﷺ. Do you understand what I mean? The passion that existed in the way he was reciting, the way he was speaking about it, the way he was conveying the Quran, made Uthba ibn Rabi'a, who understood the language, by the way. You listen to what I said. Who understood the language, feel like this was going to happen imminently. He got scared for himself and for his people. So please, just no, we don't want the sa'iqah. We don't want it. Then he got embarrassed, so he sat back because it's not appropriate to interrupt in the middle, because the Prophet ﷺ didn't interrupt him. All the garbage he was offering, he listened. So he sat back. So the Prophet continued, إِذْ جَاءَتْهُمُ الرُّسُلُ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. As their prophets and messengers came to them, مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ, they came in front of them, وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ, behind them, meaning the prophets came and did everything they could. They were there. If you're walking forward, they were there. You turned around, they were there. What were they doing? أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Do not worship anyone or serve anyone but Allah. قَالُوا لَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّنَا لَأَنزَلَ مَلَائِكَةً. Go away. If Allah wanted us to believe, He would send angels. Which is a whole different argument that we'll talk about later, inshallah. It'll come later. فَإِنَّا بِمَا أُرْسِلْتُمْ بِهِ كَافِرٌ. Indeed, we have no willingness to believe. We are in full disbelief of everything that you were sent with. فَإِنَّا بِمَا أُرْسِلْتُمْ بِهِ كَافِرٌ. It's exactly what they're saying. He would continue alayhi salatu wasalam until he arrived at ayah number 38. Why? Because ayah number 38 has a sajda in it. So once the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam came to it, he made sujood. Uthba ibn Rabi'a gets up and he runs. Abu Jahl is sitting with a few others, and they're seeing Uthba come back because they're waiting to see if what does he want? Everyone has a price. What does he need? Why is he doing this? So he sees him coming. So Abu Jahl looks at the guy beside him. فَقَالَ أَتَاكُمْ هَذَا بِغَيْرِ الْوَجْهِ الَّذِي ذَهَبَ بِهِ. He's coming back with a different face from the one he left us with. So he came. Uthba never accepted Islam, but he was a wise man. And he came and he told Abu Jahl, خَلُّوا بَيْنَ الرَّجُلِ وَبَيْنَ مَا يُرِيد. Let the man speak. Just let him speak. فإنه ما يقوله ما سمعت به من قبل. What he's saying I've never heard before. وإنه لا يقول إلا كلاما إما أن يسمعه الناس فيقبلونه فيبلغ بذلك ملكا فعزه عزكم وإما أن يكلمهم فلا يقبلوا كلامه فيقتلونه فيكفونكم شره. Let him speak. If what he says makes sense to people, they accept it, then he's going to be a big shot. And then his izz is yours. He's from us. The tribes are many in the world. He's just looking at this very pragmatically. He's one of us. He's our second cousin, third cousin. He's Qurashi. He's from us. So if he becomes the king and he's able to bring everyone together with what he's doing, then his nobility and his integrity and his achievement and success is going to be ours. And if he speaks to people and they don't like it, they'll kill him and you don't have to do it yourself. فَقَالُوا خَرُفْتَ يَا أَبَا الْوَلِيدِ. Yes, you're demented, Abu al-Walid. Go away. فَقَالَ أَنْتُمْ مَا تُرِيدُونَ. Do what you want then. And they didn't listen to him. Utbah was killed on the day of Badr. Utbah came with his two sons, with his brother and his son, during the duels. Remember that in Badr there were duels. There's always duels for all types of wars back in the day. Utbah brought himself forward for a duel. and died on the day of Badr, on the wrong side of things. Even though for a split second, for a moment, he knew what needed to be done. It's just very hard to change when you're older. It's very hard to be flexible when you've invested so much time doing the wrong thing. It's really hard. But that shows character, and that shows clarity, and that shows grit and commitment. When you're able to identify at some point in your life that, you know what, I've been on the wrong side of this for a long time, and it's clear to me. It's very, very embarrassing, by the way, to kind of make that, to admit that and to accept that I was wrong. I'm going to turn to something different. No one likes doing it. But Utbah didn't do it. And he died on the day of Badr on the wrong side. He could have been with the Prophet ﷺ. He could have been he could have been. He was that close. He felt it, he knew it. He knew the Prophet was saying something. He went back to let him speak. There's something special here. Let him speak. They said no, and he couldn't leave the status that he had built for himself amongst Quraysh, and he died that way. And that's the story of these verses. Inshallah, we will continue next weekend. Bidna ta'ala. Forgive me for taking a little bit longer than I should have. Subhanakallah bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khairan. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala.